Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our weekly Dattitude as Dunk takes a sip of his coffee. We all need a little bit of coffee this Friday morning, getting ready for Saints and Panthers on Sunday at Bank of America Stadium at noon on Fox. And we're excited to get going. Dunk, what's going on this morning?
Dude, I got my coffee early morning for me. But I'm good to go, man. I'm ready to talk some football. And once I get my second cup, man, it's on.
All right. Well, we welcome you to add in your comments or questions. Dunk will ask him to answer them the best that he can. Who knows? Maybe I'll answer them. If you want to just say hello, like Trav504 is. Who dat, everybody? We're glad to have you. We got some other comments here. James Richard says, "Happy Friday." We appreciate the sentiment. Who would make a better starter, Jameis or Dalton? We're going to get into that in just a minute. Don't go. You're going a little fast there. Hold on, James. Jerry, good morning. Hello, everybody. Well, glad to have you. And NOLA Ballin has got his fleur-de-lis rolling. Dunk on a Friday morning, our live Dattitude. We do this every Friday at 9:15 a.m. We're happy to have anyone who wants to join us. And we're going to talk, again, Saints, Panthers. We are going to talk a little bit about LSU and New Mexico, a 31-point favorite the Tigers are. And we got to bring up Tulane because they're 3-0. So we're certainly going to talk about them a little bit. But, Dunk, I want to start like we have every week just for a brief moment, talk about last night's game. You talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. Kind of not what I thought. I thought it would be a lower scoring game, but Browns got that last touchdown that kind of made the score skewed a little bit. You lose anything that had to do with Pittsburgh, you lose it last night. If you had him in a teaser, that last touchdown killed you. But overall, actually a better game than I thought it would be. And Jacoby Brissett looked pretty good.
Yeah, he was a guy that Sean Payton was really high on. He came highly recommended, from Bill Parcells. And he's had a little bit of a, up and down career. But I know the Saints were really high on him when he came out in the draft. And obviously Bill Belichick also liked Brissett too. So this is a guy that I think is the perfect fill-in right now until they get to Deshaun Watson. And you have to say that Kevin Stefanski's done a terrific job. I mean, they're off to a 2-1 start. They really are not far away from being 3-0. They probably are kicking themselves losing that game to the Jets last week. The Steelers, it does not surprise me that they're off to a slow start. That was a huge win they got in their opener against Cincinnati. But JD, if you've seen them play, I mean, their offensive line is awful. I have no idea what they thought they were going to do going into the season with not addressing their offensive line. It's really going to, I think, handicap their entire season. I think their defense is obviously top-notch. They've got elite players there. Even without T.J. Watt, they have elite players. They've got a great running back. They've added to the receiving corps. Everything is good there except the offensive line is so awful. I think it's going to, undermine any success they can possibly have. And this might be a year where they don't make the playoffs for the first time in a while.
Not only that, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. And I think This is the first time it's going to happen. And, it's a shame because as good as Najee Harris is, and I don't know if whoever didn't see the game last night, go and find the catch that George Pickens made, the rookie from Georgia. That was just an incredible – it was a Odell Beckham kind of one-handed grab, and it was incredible. And so that kid is going to be something special. And I know that Mike Tomlin talks about being married to Mitch Trubisky, but and I know the offensive line stinks, so you don't want to throw your rookie quarterback to the wolves. But I got to think at some point we're going to see Kenny Pickett. I think
I'm high on Pickett, man. I tried to draft him in my fantasy draft because we have a keeper league, and I think he's going to be good for, I think he's going to be their guy for the next decade. And I know a lot of people were down on the quarterback class this year. I think it's going to turn out to be better than people think. I think Malik Willis will end up being a good player in the league, and I think it's going to be really good. And I'm with you. I don't know if you turn to him this early. Trubisky is what he is, and he's definitely a bridge to Pickett. When that is, I don't know.
I think at some point you just say sooner rather than later. Buck's Skull Gang in the house says hello. All right, well, Buck's Skull Gang. I don't know if that means you're a Tampa fan or not. And I will say this. We don't talk about spaghetti models and hurricanes too early, but everything I've seen this morning looks like this thing is going to be going towards Tampa. So if that is the case, I mean, obviously we've had our share. So, I mean, we don't want that here, but we certainly feel for the people of Tampa that's what this thing's doing. Keep vigilant. Everyone keep vigilant over the next few days and see what this thing is doing. Tampa Bay is at home this week against the Green Bay Packers, and very rare time when we probably say go Packers, but that's that's neither here nor there. All right, let's talk a little bit before we get into the Saints. I do want to touch on LSU and Tulane, and I want to get your thoughts on what you saw last week. LSU, to me, Brian Kelly did an outstanding job at Dunk at halftime, making adjustments and making those changes. And I think Mississippi State actually is a better team than LSU, but I was really impressed with the adjustments they made, the adjustments that Jaden Daniels made as well. The defense played much better in the second half. To hold this air raid team down to this few points they did, under 20 points, is kind of an incredible job.
They did. I thought the defense played great, like situational football. I think they stopped them a number of times on 4th down, 3rd and short. It seemed like State would get a nice gain on 1st and 2nd down, and then they'd have 3rd and short, 4th and short, and they couldn't convert. That's a credit to the LSU coaching staff. I think we're seeing some of the early signs of what Scott Woodward wanted in the head coaching position, right? I mean, he's put together an excellent staff, and we see these in-game adjustments. Same thing happened in the Florida State game. And I think we're seeing that Florida State's better than everybody thought. I mean, they're going to have a good season. So I think you have to be encouraged if you're an LSU fan. Some of the games that looked really intimidating early on, with going to Florida and going to Texas A&M, don't look quite as intimidating right now. So a lot to look forward to in the SEC slate.
Agreed. And, I really like what I see out of LSU so far. I think this is a team that's going to get better as the season gets along, and it's a transition year. I mean, if this team wins 7 games, then they've done what they're supposed to do this season. A lot of LSU fans with unrealistic expectations, but you go in SEC play, you beat Mississippi State. If you can win this week and beat Auburn next week and start out 4-1 and grab yourself 3 more wins along the way, because frankly, I think they can beat Florida. I think they can beat Arkansas and Texas A&M. Whether they will or not, we'll find out. But there are certain games on the schedule that you aren't going to win. You're probably not going to beat Tennessee. You're almost certainly not going to beat Alabama, and something fluky happens. So we'll see. Just get better as you go along, and I think that's what Brian Kelly's trying to do.
Hey, I'll tell you, the other thing that I think is really impressive is they've decided as a staff to just go with these 2 true freshman tackles. Yeah. And, that takes some gumption, right? And both of them played very well against State. They're only going to get better. They're both obviously extremely talented. But that takes some onions, as they say, to go in the SEC with true freshman tackles. And I think those guys have bright futures. But it also speaks to where the program was. The fact that you're having to use true freshmen on your offensive line, you certainly would like to have them groomed with a year or 2 in the strength and conditioning program. But that's not where LSU's at. And they don't have a lot of depth, JD, so they have to stay healthy. We know they've already lost Mason Smith, was a big loss. They've been able to kind of withstand that so far. But they can't afford too many injuries just because of the state of the program.
No doubt. Duncan Derry here on Friday morning, our live show. Every Friday morning, 9:15 a.m. live here on all these same NOLA.com and bet.NOLA.com channels. We're happy when you join us. Feel free to comment, leave questions. And if you're listening to us on where you listen to your normal podcast, every major podcast platform, you just search for Dattitude. We're live on Friday. We're also on Mondays and Thursdays. We do shows as well during the football season, and glad that you're with us. All right, let's touch on Tulane, and Tulane bringing in Southern Miss to Yulman Stadium this weekend. Duncan, you got to say that the Green Wave and Willie Fritz are, after last year's 2-win season, quite a surprise. And what a job by the Green Wave to go out to Kansas State, a Power 5 team. I know it's not a super Power 5 team, but still a team that was on the verge of being ranked, actually. Right. And so the Tulane went out there and did it really with defense.
Yeah, their defense is playing really well. Chris Hampton, their defensive coordinator in his second year. What they told me, I was out there this week and talked to Willie Fritz and Troy Dan and the AD about their start. It's the first 3-0 start since that unbeaten team in '98. So there's a lot of enthusiasm right now. And they kind of snuck up on people, I think. Kansas State, I agree with you. They're not a household name or a superpower, but they did beat Missouri the week before by about 30, I think it was, an SEC team.
Don't tell that to Zach Ewing.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. But I'm just saying, I mean, now I think Tulane caught them. I know you and I both know about betting, right? I mean, I think they caught them at the perfect week. They came off a big win, and then they've got Oklahoma this week. So it's a classic kind of sandwich game in between two big games. And Tulane was 2-touchdown underdogs. And I thought, when I watched the game, I thought they were clearly the better team. They kind of dominated that game. It probably shouldn't have been as close as it was. Credit to Willie Fritz for going for it there on 4th and 1 to put the game away. That's what you do in that situation. He'd been close before. I wrote about it this week. He was 0-15 against Power 5 programs as a head coach. 0-15, had lost twice in overtime. Once Georgia Southern at Georgia. That one had to hurt in overtime. So it was great to see him get over the hump. Now, they've got a dangerous game. I'm telling you, Southern Miss this game.
I agree.
You're riding
2 touchdown favorites, exactly.
It's the sandwich game for them. I mean, they got Houston next week. Houston's not they were preseason ranked, and they don't look nearly as strong as what everybody thought, but they still got a lot of talent. Easy to overlook Southern Miss, and I'm a big fan of Will Hall when he was here on the Tulane staff. He's a good old country boy coach, son of a coach. I think his father is the winningest or one of the winningest coaches in Mississippi high school history. So he's been around the game a long time. He's going to have that team ready. He knows Willie Fritz. They're very close. So I think it's a dangerous game for Tulane. I think they'll win. But if I were a betting man, which I guess I am to some degree, I think I'd take those points.
I think I might dabble in it. I actually might take the points as well. I hate betting against Tulane, but you're right. They're basically in the same spot that Kansas State was in last week. All right, let's get to the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. And are you going to Charlotte this weekend?
Leave in the morning, yeah. Not only that, fly out in the morning, cover the game, fly out Monday from Charlotte to London. So I got to pack a lot this week.
Okay. You're going to be gone for a little while. We're going to have to figure out next week. I told you I want you to bring me some crumpets.
We'll see. I mean, I just saw the weather forecast, JD. It's like a low of 48 in London. I'm not.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, not happy. It's in the low 60s, but most of the temperatures are in upper 50s. It's going to be a big shock.
Well, it beats a hurricane, right? I mean,
yeah. It's a good time to be leaving, unfortunately. All
right, we do have a couple of questions and comments here, so we're going to get to them and just start off with that. By the way, at the end of the show, before we finish off, Duncan and I will give our predictions, what we think. We're going to give a score prediction like we do every Friday here on Dattitude. All right, first off, Silence Do Good says, relax, Saints fans. Who does he think he is, Aaron Rodgers? I mean, is that Ozzy? Is that like a combination of Ozzy and Ben Franklin as his picture there? I'm not sure what that is there, but all right. Jerry asked, and Jerry's one of our regulars, so we're glad to have him. All right, Jerry asked, do you think Jameis Winston will start, or will we see Andy Dalton starting on Sunday? I can answer that one. That one's easy. We're going to see Jameis Winston starting. Now, my question is, and we had a question earlier, and look, I know coaches can be stubborn, and I've been the biggest Jameis Winston defender, so I'm not going to bash him. We know he's injured. We know he has issues with his back. I don't know if they're broken vertebrae or if they're
no. Let's get that straight. I mean,
let's crack vertebrae.
Let's get that straight. First of all, none of us really know, right? We have no idea. I mean,
he's not talking about it. So.
He's not talking about it. There's a report out there, but talking to medical people this week, it could vary. It sounds bad, fractured vertebrae. These could be small hairline fractures that you and I have. I mean, it's not uncommon to have.
When you get to our age, you get a lot of stuff.
I'm just saying, it from everything I've been able to gather, talking to people that are close to the situation, he's going to be in pain, but they deaden that pain on game day, and they insist it does not affect him that much as far as passing the football. And matter of fact, everyone I talked to last week in practice said he looked tremendous throwing the ball. So I'm on the, until I hear otherwise from people I trust, I'm on the train of he just had a bad game and really a bad quarter.
He had 7 bad quarters, Dunk.
Yeah, he missed some throws, but I'm not on the train that his back is what's causing the problems. I think Tampa Bay's defense, which is excellent, caused the problems. And he blinked, and he can't do that in a game like that against a Hall of Fame quarterback. So until I see differently, I think he's going to be the quarterback, and I think he's going to play well this week. I'll be shocked if he doesn't.
All right, here's my question, though, and this is the question I think most rational fans have. I mean, first of all, being rational, you go with your starting quarterback. I have no qualm. I mean, you start Jameis Winston, period. Amen. There is no thought of starting Andy Dalton this week whatsoever. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. But I will say this. If he goes into halftime, if it's like 6-3 at halftime or something along those lines, and we see the same Jameis Winston that we've seen, I mean, there's a reason why you at this point you get it. I know there's no such thing as a must-win in week 3, but you know what? It's pretty darn close when you look at their schedule that's coming up on the horizon and where this team needs to be if you want to make the playoffs. So the question, I guess, is if it's the same kind of performance you get in the first half of this game against Carolina and you're either trailing or it's 3-3 or it's 6-3 or whatever, if you're Dennis Allen, do you think about making a switch?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that soon. Now, I think if it continues for a couple more games, I think the leash is definitely shorter than it was because of what we all saw. I mean, those were just egregious errors. And it's less to do with the fact that it was interceptions. It's that it was that kind of game where you knew you had to manage the game. You had to play it a certain way. I mean, I compare it to like a tennis match at Wimbledon where you see a long rally, a long volley. Nobody's going for the winner. They're just hitting these long volleys. That's what it felt like. The two quarterbacks knew the defenses were dominating. You played field position. The head coaches were not going to really be very, very aggressive. And somebody finally blinked, and it was Jameis Winston. And you have to know what kind of game it is. And that's, I think, what bothered Dennis Allen's never going to say it publicly, but I guarantee you the coaching staff is talking about that internally of like, how do you make those plays in a game like that? And that's stuff we saw him do in Tampa. And so it's not like it was a one-off. This is something that's hounded him throughout his career. Now, that was a big-time opponent and a big-time game. He's not going to have to match wits or out-duel a future Hall of Famer like Tom Brady in the next 3 weeks. He gets Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, who's struggling, and then you get Geno Smith. He just needs to play, take what the defense gives him, get back on track, and this team, I think, can reel off 3 wins like that.
Okay, I wouldn't put Kirk Cousins in that category. I mean, I know what you're saying.
He's up and down.
He stunk last week in primetime, but he always stinks in primetime. He's got a receiving core. If there is a receiver, I think there are only maybe 1 or 2 receiving cores better than the Saints, and the Vikings have one. I mean, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and even KJ Osborne to some extent with Dalvin Cook in the backfield is pretty scary. But we'll talk about Minnesota next week. I do want to talk about you bring up Baker Mayfield and where the Saints are. I mean, take a look at this graphic, and this is just through for 2 weeks. So let's don't get too fired up about where this is or where this isn't. But you look at the Saints' total offense, 17th. So as bad as you think they've been, I mean, they're 18th overall in passing offense. So, I mean, as bad as you think they've been, it hasn't been as bad as one might think. So, 14 other teams have been worse than the Saints in passing offense. You look at passing defense, the problem is for the Panthers, like last year, they were 2nd overall in total defense. Well, they're 9th overall in total defense right now early on. They've been very good against the pass, and they haven't been able to stop the run. So that kind of leads me to where do we think Alvin Kamara is this week, Dunk? And I saw some reports of people saying, oh, well, let's don't use him if we don't need – no, you need Alvin Kamara in there this week. If he can play, he's got to go.
Yeah. Excuse me. There's no holding Alvin Kamara out. I mean, you got to get him out there. He's your best offensive player, in my opinion. So, especially against this run defense, which is, as you see, 29th right now in run defense. I mean, they've given up they gave up, I think, over 200 yards against the Browns, who have a great rushing offense. The Saints showed, I thought, some really positive, encouraging signs in the ground game against Tampa Bay. You know, that drive right before Mark Ingram fumbled, unfortunately, was almost all done on the ground, where they were just mauling Tampa Bay's front seven, which is a very good front seven. So to me, that's where this game's going to be won. Carolina's got an excellent defense. They're very fast, great speed. They're not very big. And so I think that's where the Saints start pounding them up front.
I agree. And so you got to figure out how to get moving. And that offensive line, which played much better in game number 2 than they did in game number 1, is going to have to figure out how to do it again, because they're going to have to move the football. They're going to have to protect for Jameis. I'm Captain Obvious this morning, but it is what it is. I mean, but you talk about the Panthers' offense against the Saints' defense. And although I don't think we have seen the best Saints defense, they were certainly much better against Tampa Bay. And until the fourth quarter, and you got 5 turnovers, things are going to happen. But you look at the overall total rank, it shows how they're skewed, because as well as the Saints played last week, they're still 17th on defense. But Carolina, I don't think this is skewed. I think they're going to have trouble. I mean, Christian McCaffrey doesn't look like himself yet. He hasn't. Now, I say that, and he'll go off for 200 yards this week. But, you know, I think he's still working his way back into the offense. And they're 20th in rushing offense, and Baker Mayfield hasn't been able to do anything, 30th in passing offense.
Yeah, they've really struggled offensively, and they're going to struggle against the Saints. There's no doubt. I think it's going to be another low-scoring game. We talked about that last week, and we were spot on. I mean, what was it, 3-3 going into the fourth quarter?
3-0 at halftime.
Yeah, I just felt like that was a lock if you were a gambler. And I feel like it's going to be low-scoring this week. I mean, I know the total's 41, but I just feel like these are going to be field goal games, you know, and that's what gets you the under is field goals instead of touchdowns. But one thing I would say that I think could happen in this game is you could end up with some turnovers on both sides. If you remember last year, Jim, the Carolina really caused the Saints a lot of problems with their blitz packages. Phil Snow, their defensive coordinators, very aggressive and creative, and that's been a problem. I mean, to me, that's the biggest issue with the offense right now is people know the Saints are struggling right now, not only with blitz pickups, but I think, frankly, the quarterback struggles when he gets blitzed. I think that's an issue. And indeed he's not as mobile with this back issue, which I think that's fair to say. And not only that, he's coming off major surgery on his knee. He's not the most mobile guy right now. People are going to come after him. We've seen that happen now in 2 games, and I guarantee you Carolina's going to do it. The Saints cannot afford these protection miscues that they've had, or else they're going to be, you know, facing 2nd, 3rd and long, and the quarterback might not survive the game and may have to go to Andy Dalton. And I think likewise on the other side, you know, Baker Mayfield's not a very big guy. He's 6 foot, 6'1". He's had more balls batted at the line of scrimmage than any quarterback in the league. And the Saints, as we all know, have tall trees across the front. They're great at getting their hands up, and those batted balls can easily lead to interceptions, deflected passes, things like that. So I could see that happening on both sides if the lines are not up to snuff to protect their quarterbacks.
Duncan Derry here on Friday. We got about 15 minutes left in our live show here. Again, after Duncan and I are done, I'm going to go back and add my monologue and end my closing, and we'll put it on our podcast platform. So wherever you get your major podcast, wherever you get your podcast, major podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, we're there. Search for Dattitude and you can find us. And we thank you for joining us. Again, about 15 minutes left, probably about 10 minutes or so till we get to our score predictions. I was with you last week in the Dome. One of the things that I didn't like that I wanted to talk to you about, I've been put this on my list to talk to you about this week, is I've seen the Saints after losses, and I got a different vibe in that locker room yesterday. I don't know. I mean, it was weird that Demario Davis didn't want to talk to anybody. He wasn't talking at all. They obviously, when you play Tampa Bay, it maybe you take it a little bit more to heart. but it was a weird vibe. It was almost like they were down unlike ways that I've seen them down before. Not a pissed off kind of down. It was more of like, we weren't as good as them kind of down, if that makes any sense. I just wondering if you got the same vibe that I got. I know you weren't in the Saints locker room the whole time. You didn't get there towards the end, but did it feel kind of weird to you?
Yeah, I think there's still a feeling out process with this team. I think it's still kind of developing its identity.
Yeah.
And, the leaders on the team are trying to get a sense of it. We're still early. I mean, I try and remind people, their teams routinely. I mean, look at the Indianapolis Colts. I think they started 1-4 and 1-5 the last 2 seasons and still, ended up having winning seasons. So you can't panic early on this long season. But I do agree that there is a little bit of a leadership void. They have strong leaders on this team, but I don't sense it from a team perspective yet. And that's probably to be expected with a new head coach, new coordinators, people in new roles that have new responsibilities and expectations on their shoulders. So I agree that there's a little bit of an off feel to it, but man, it's still early. And I wouldn't want to read too much into it yet.
Well, I will say this. You talk about leaders and people all over Mark Ingram for his fumble, and don't look, that fumble may have cost them the game. I mean, when you think about where they were, and it could have been 10-3 Saints, and Jameis probably doesn't. First of all, they certainly don't have 5 turnovers. If he doesn't do that, it could be 2 or 1 or whatever. I mean, it changes the whole game. But I love the fact that Mark Ingram will stand there like a man. And I got there. I was one of the first ones to him. He answers the question about the fumble, and then people are moving over from Tyrann Mathieu and talking to him about it. And he answered the same question like 3 or 4 times, and didn't get mad at anybody and say, I've answered that already, like some athletes would do. He stood there and he answered it every time, took responsibility for it. And so when you talk about leaders, I love that Mark Ingram is back on this team, and I think he's really going to help some of these younger guys, especially the younger running backs, Dwayne Washington and Tony Jones. I think he really can help those guys.
Yeah, he ran hard in that game. I mean, he had
did.
a nice run. And, look, I've watched that play about 3 times on the replay, and he had 2 hands on the ball. It was just a really good play by the defense. And sometimes I think we have to remember, and I know it's hard, man. You're a fan. It's your team. You look through everything from the prism or the perspective of your team. And sometimes you have to pull back and just say, man, that was a good play by the other team. I've said that all along. I know no one's going to agree with me here, but I've defended Jared Cook till I'm blue in the face. I mean, that fumble, everybody blames him.
Oh, man.
He didn't even see the guy. The guy was behind him. Antoine Winfield made a great play. The way I try to explain it to people, it's like a blindside quarterback blitz. You blame the quarterback when he gets hit from behind and stripped? No. And that's kind of what happened in that play. I mean, Jared Cook was running. Antoine Winfield is an incredible player. I came away so impressed with him in this game. Remember, he had an open field stick on Mark Ingram where it was him. Early in the game, I think the first drive, Ingram broke one up the middle, and the only guy that was there left to tackle him was Antoine Winfield. That guy is a baller, and he made a great play on Jared Cook. If that is, put it this way, if that's Marshawn Lattimore or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson stripping Mike Evans the exact same way from behind, everybody's talking about how great the defensive play is. They're not talking about Mike Evans choking. It's all in how you look at the play and you look at it from your perspective. And I just felt like, talking to Dennis Allen on Monday, he said that's exactly the technique we teach our defensive backs and players. And he tipped his cap because he knows Mark Ingram's not a big-time fumbler.
See, now you've gone and ripped off my Band-Aid and stuck a fork in there.
Saying.
That's a sore subject with me. I'm not a huge Jared Cook fan. That's a different story. But again, I will defend him in the fact that he manned up as well. So I mean, things happen, and the past is the past. I still say if that fumble doesn't happen, the Saints win the Super Bowl. But we'll never know.
Hey, I will say this. I mean, that's part of being a pro. You make a great point about Mark Ingram. That's what I respect, guys like that.
Me too.
Yeah, that's big time. And look, they've got a locker room full of pros. I mean, personally, I would like to see Marshawn Lattimore talk. I mean, he hasn't talked all week. To me, that's something that needs to be addressed because obviously he was involved in a huge turning point in the game, and I'm not even blaming him, but I'd like to hear what he has to say about the whole situation. And he could take some lessons from Mark Ingram on that.
What the hell was Bruce Arians doing on the field anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to be there in the future.
I bet you he's not. That's the first thing I told Zach. I bet you he won't be there again.
I mean, he was instigating. Look, I mean, coming from someone who's covered Sean Payton, I mean, Payton does that stuff all the time. He did it all the time. He's a fiery guy during a game. He'd have all kinds of back and forth with players, but it never really boiled over. I think it did in that Atlanta game when he did the choke sign to Devontae Freeman. But there was way more going on than people knew because I always have my binoculars trained on the coaches. And I would see Peyton doing it all the time. I've never seen Arians do it like that. And he was doing it throughout the game.
Oh, he was goading them the whole game.
Yeah.
And then Evans with his Evans needs work. I'm just going to
here's another thing.
Sugarcoat it.
I was watching the replay, Jim, and the play that Brady fumbled, like early in the game, remember, lost that fumble?
Yep.
And there was like a scrum there. When you watch the replay, Mike Evans comes into that pile and starts throwing people around. I'm like, what are you doing? This guy, and everything I've heard about him is he's a great guy. He's a great pro. You talk to people in Tampa. I mean, he's revered down there. But that stuff's out of line. And what he did with Marshawn Lattimore deserved a suspension for sure. There's just no call for that.
I got to be honest. I didn't think it was enough. I think he should have been suspended for at least 2 games. I mean, he was literally, his foot was on the sideline. He was done. He was going off to the sideline, and he turns around and comes back and cheap shots Lattimore. First of all, I'm with the fans that Lattimore shouldn't have been suspended. That call came from New York. It did not come from the officials that were on the field. And I get there trying to be as fair as possible and try to avoid anything possibly featuring the game. But I'm glad they went back and suspended Evans, but that dude should have been suspended for 2 games. You can't come off a sideline like that and just blindside a guy that you have nothing to do with.
He was targeting Lattimore because they've had
of course.
There's no doubt about that.
Which is another reason why it should have been longer.
I think Lattimore's mistake wasn't the initial stuff. It was when the referees, the officials were trying to clear up the pile, and he started swinging. I mean, right in front of an official. Once you start throwing, I mean, that's why he got kicked out of the game. It was after. And look, I know it's a melee, and it's a wild in there, but you just can't throw a punch right in front of an official, especially when you already were involved earlier. So
Travis says it looked like Brady threw a punch at Lattimore. I don't think I saw that. But Brady was definitely jawing and getting his face in there and talking about it. I mean, I think he was trying to rile up Lattimore. That was the old 45-year-old wily veteran saying, look, we've seen Chauncey Gardner-Johnson with the jawing. I think that was his way of trying to get back and say, you know what? You guys have got a penalty out of me before. I'm going to work. And I think he was just working it.
Man, they had
Brady's not going to get in a fight with anybody. He's too pretty.
No, they had him really frustrated. And I think that's probably adds to what you were talking about, the vibe in the locker room. I think they were really disappointed because they had that game. I mean, it was there for the taking, and they let it slip away. And I think that probably it was just more disappointment than just any other loss because of the opponent, the stakes, and the fact that they knew exactly how to win that game. And then it all came unraveled so quickly there. And I think that's more than anything else is probably what we felt in that locker room.
Well, that gets me back to this one because I think one of the things I'm most interested in is to see, Dunk, how the Saints come out this week against the Panthers. Are they going to come out fired up and pissed off and use it to their advantage? Or are they going to come out flat and mope? I mean, to me, the first quarter of this game is going to tell me a whole lot about this team, not just in this game, but it's going to tell me a whole lot about this team in general, I think.
Yeah, well, I don't think they can afford to be flat because you're going to get a desperate Carolina team, right? They're 0-2. They've lost 2 close games. They have to get a win. They've got a head coach whose neck is on the line this year. Baker Mayfield's certainly going to be motivated. So, they've got to come out with some attitude, I think, in this game and establish their dominance early along both lines of scrimmage because they have a huge advantage, both lines. I expect the Saints defensive line to be a little more impactful in this game, strictly because Baker Mayfield's not going to get the ball out as quick as Tom Brady. I mean, Brady was basically saying, I am not taking sacks. I'm not going to have negative plays. I'll punt. That's fine.
Right.
I'm not going to take it. I mean, he was throwing the ball 2.2 seconds. He was getting it out quick.
And that was obviously the game plan, and I agree with you. I think Baker Mayfield obviously more mobile than Tom Brady, but that doesn't mean that the edge rushers aren't going to get there. And Cam Jordan's going to get his. Cam Jordan's going to get his this weekend, I think. I mean, but I think that's also and have to. Let's see. Trav asked. He wants to know why didn't Fournette get any discipline. I don't know that Fournette really. I know they were jawing, but I don't think it was to the level of even a penalty. I mean, I'm not sure that.
I think they took I think they took the two guys that they know have a history there.
Correct.
And those guys were probably on the field jawing the whole game, and the officials maybe, for all we know, had conversations with them earlier. I mean, there's more to that, I think, than just the melee we saw.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's. Before we get to our predictions, I want to talk about the defense a little bit. We talked about the Saints and where their defense is. They've been okay. Now, granted, this is just 2 games. That first game against Atlanta is a little skewed because Marcus Mariota was able to run against the Saints. Baker Mayfield and Marcus Mariota are not that much different. So I guess if you think about game 1 and how Mariota was able to get away from the Saints defense a little bit, Cordero Patterson was able to run against the Saints defense. Now they stuff Fournette and they get McCaffrey, who has had kind of a mixed bag. He has had some really good games against the Saints, and then he's had some games where he's been stuffed. So you look at the numbers here. What do you think about the Saints defense against the Panthers offense?
Well, I mean, they got to shut down McCaffrey. I mean, that's where everything starts for them. I know it's simplistic, but Baker Mayfield, I don't think is quite the running threat that Mariota is. I mean, I know he's run he's averaging about 5 or 6 carries a game, but Mariota is an excellent athlete. Not that Baker Mayfield isn't, but I think they use that RPO system a little more just to set up the passing game more than an actual weapon in their run attack with the quarterback. They want McCaffrey to be the playmaker. And look, they've got some guys on the perimeter. I mean, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore. I mean, those guys are good players, but they've just been limited so far this year offensively, mainly because I think their offensive line is still a work in progress. They've tried to improve it, but I don't think it's still where it needs to be. So for me, the Saints shut down the running game, which I think is job 1 this week. Everything else will fall into place. But if they're getting yards on the ground with McCaffrey, or if they have to go with Dante Foreman or Hubbard, that won't be a good sign. And I think that also will add into what you're talking about, JD, as far as the energy and the effort. We'll see early on because usually it shows up in the ground game. If you're bringing it and you're into it, that Saints defense, like we saw Sunday against the Bucs, nobody's getting yards on the ground against them.
Do we think we see Paulson Adebo on the field this week?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do. Well, I think here's what I'd say. I think he'll be a game-time decision. They'll work him out on the field and make that decision. I think he's the only player that there's a question on health-wise, and that's an incredible place to be. I mean, I think Alvin Kamara is definitely going to play. I think Winston's going to start unless he has some kind of setback in the next day or two. So this team will be as close to healthy as you can be in week 3 of the year, and that's a pretty damn good place to be.
Okay, we have come to the point of the show. Anybody who wants to make their own predictions, I'll read them on the air here. You got about 5 minutes before we're done for the day, the live portion of Dattitude. It is that time, Jeff Duncan, where we each give our predictions for today's game, and we both had the Saints winning week 1, but we were way off on our scores. Last week we were pretty darn close. I think we were each given the Saints the benefit of the doubt. I said I wasn't real keen on my pick. Wasn't super confident, but I was tired of picking against the Saints when it came to the Bucs and banging my head against the wall. So this week, when it comes down to me, is the Saints have to get off to a better start. Obviously, I mean, Captain Obvious. Jameis Winston has got to not turn the ball over, and the Saints as a whole have to not turn the ball over. If the Saints don't turn the ball over more than once, I think they win fairly easily. If they turn it over twice, they're going to have struggle. If they turn it over more than twice, they're going to lose. So, but with that being said, I think it's going to be a tight game. I agree with you, low scoring. But let me get your score before I give mine.
Well, I agree with you. Look, I think the Saints try to run the ball down Carolina's throat. I think that's a two-pronged strategy. One, I think they know Carolina's a little light in the pants up front other than Derek Brown. I think they feel like they can dominate at the point of attack, get that running game going. And the other thing that does is it protects Jameis Winston. You don't have to put too much on his shoulders. You don't have to put him back there in harm's way for blitzes from Phil Snow. They have creative blitzers too. Jeremy Chin, excellent from the second level or third level. And then Shaq Thompson. Those guys are good at coming after the quarterback. So to me, Saints run the ball. That means the clock's going to run, which means it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think the Saints win this one about let me give 23 to like 9. I think they can win pretty comfortably. I'll be shocked. I just don't see Carolina scoring very much on the Saints defense, assuming they bring it.
23 to 9. All right. Poppy says, is that the wrong one? Okay. Jerry says he's got the Saints winning 28 to 10. Y'all are way more confident than I am. I think that Carolina covers. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Carolina wins. I'm going to pick the Saints to win, but I think it's going to be a nail biter down in the end. I don't think either offense is going to do a whole lot. I hope I'm wrong because it's getting kind of stale. I know it's only week 3, but the Saints have to win this game. I think they will find a way to win this game again. If the Saints go 1-2, I'm starting to really sweat my over 7.5 win bets because I'm looking at what's coming down the pike. And it's not pretty. Because I could tell you right now, I'll give you a spoiler alert. I don't think the Saints can beat the Vikings. I really don't. I don't think they match up well with those receivers. Again, I don't want to talk too much about Saints Vikings just yet. And going to London, they both have to make the travel, but that is not a good matchup for the Saints at all. So this is a must win. I think the Saints do win. I think it's something like along the lines of 1917. So there's a reason why the sharps are jumping all over, and I'll put this graphic up one more time. This line has come down from 3. It actually was 3.5. The look-ahead line, I think, was 3.5 or 4. And the Saints, now this 2.5 is a minus 120 bet if you want to bet on Carolina. So you have to give juice if you're betting on. I'm sorry, it's minus 120 on the Saints. So you could still bet Carolina at +3. At +1 at minus 120. So you got to give extra juice to get that half a point either way. So it's really on the borderline of 2.5 and 3. But the sharps have been all over Carolina this week, and actually there's more money, there's more tickets on Carolina. So
I like your pick. I do think this could be another Will Lutz game winner game. I can see that. I think the kicking game's a big this week. Blake Gillikin, Will Lutz give the Saints, I think, an advantage there. And I could see it very similar to how we saw last week. Maybe not quite as extreme, 3-0, 3-3, but similar to you're playing field position. You don't want to make mistakes.
Right.
And you're happy to punt on 4th down.
And they have to be. And I hope Dennis Allen, I said it in the beginning, again, I'm been one of the biggest Jameis defenders the past year and a half there can be. But if he stinks it up the first quarter or 2 quarters, I really hope Dennis Allen's willing to make a switch. And I know it's not like Jameis Winston, some rookie or a second-year guy it's going to take a blow to his confidence. I think he could still come back and be okay. But this team has to win this game, and whatever they need to do to win it, they got to do it. But got to stop McCaffrey, and you got to be able to hold on to the football. They can do that, the Saints will win.
Yeah, and I tell you, the thing I've heard about Jameis's back, the thing that they're worried about is less to do with what I said earlier, his throwing mechanics and things like that. They're worried about him taking a hit. And that's why he's got a flak jacket, protection. I know he's wearing some special protection there. They were worried, especially in that Bucs game, about like Vita Vea, one of those big guys, Akeem Hicks, landing on him. And then that exacerbating the injury for longer. So they're going to be, I think, extra cautious with how they run this offense and exposing him to a hit. So that's why I think it plays in more to them being conservative offensively. And they're going to take their shots. But this is a team that I think they can beat. They score in the low 20s. I'll be shocked if they don't win if they get to that point.
Well, I will say this. I hope your score is on and mine is further off. I don't want to be right like I was right in week 1. I don't want it to come down to Will Lutz. I mean, let's be frank. This show's way more interesting when the Saints win than when the Saints lose. So we're definitely we want our people to come back, and we hope you come back next Friday live at 9:15 a.m. Dunk is going to find are you going to be able to do it? Have you looked at your schedule? Are you going to
Yeah, I mean, we'll figure it out. I mean, I'll definitely do it. Let's plan on it, but I just need to see the practice schedule and how it translates to the 6-hour time change. But I think we should be okay.
So Dunk will be in the middle. He'll be all the way past lunch by the time we come on live next week. He's going to bring us all. I think he's promised. He's bringing everyone crumpets. You'll have to supply your own tea, crumpets for everyone.
Maybe some shortbread. I'm a big shortbread guy.
All right, shortbread. I'm a shortbread guy. If it's got carbs in it, I like it. So we'll do that as well. But we're looking forward to it. And Dunk, I know you got a long week coming up. We'll let you go, and looking forward to talking to you in London.
Yeah, be across the pond, mate.
That'll just about do it for this live portion of Dattitude. We thank you for joining us. We will see you next Friday. Don't forget, Dattitude is on every Monday and Thursday. Again, live on Friday, and you can find us wherever you find your podcast, Apple, Google, and Spotify. You see Dunk. If you're watching live, you see his mug there, and he'll see you from London. I'll be here in Mandeville, as I always am. Enjoy the week, enjoy the game, and have a great weekend, everybody.